Good morning, Year 6, and welcome to Thursday, the 10th of December's writing input for today. So, we should have written our introduction from yesterday, so it might be a good idea before you start just to have a reread of that and just double check you haven't made any silly mistakes. Check capital letters, full stops. If you've used rhetorical questions, don't forget those question marks. So just pause the video, have a quick read through and check that you are 100% okay with your introduction. Right, so little steps to success for today. Well, we are writing about Mayan society. We're going to do this in two parts because there's a lot to write about. So the first thing you need to do is read 3 notes about Mayan society. We're going to do that in a minute with mine. Then have a look at your structure strip so you know exactly what you're writing, what sentences you need. And then write a couple of sentences about each part of the structure strip. So you will need your ancient Mayan research booklets that you took home with you and that you made notes in the day before yesterday. So here are some of my Mayan society notes. So you can just see I've done a few things in note form about there being elite and ordinary people, who the elite people were, so royal family, priests, and so on. And that they had all the wealth, all the money, and all the power. And then underneath, they are ordinary people. They were just workers, slaves, farmers, and labourers. And then a couple more notes about the states being ruled by a king or a queen, and kings often warred with other city-states to show their power. A couple more here about Mayan men and women both worked, but doing different things. So the men worked on farms, grew the food and made the tools. They also did a lot of the hunting. And then the women cooked the food, made the pottery and looked after the young children. So men and women used to work, but they had different roles. And then ordinary people, the ones that weren't the elite, any food and produce, so that's animals that they reared, or food that they grew, or food that they foraged, or animals that they hunted, they had to give a certain amount of that to the elite class. So no matter what they grew, they always had to give some of it away. And they had to help build public buildings. So all those buildings that we saw the other day, all made of stone, they would have been built by ordinary people. And they wouldn't have been paid for that. They were just expected to do it. Otherwise, they could have been sacrificed or killed. So, and then children nearly always did the same job as their parents. So if you were born in a lower class, you stayed a lower class. Kings weren't just allowed, nobody just became king. The king's son would become king next, or the king's daughter would become queen next. Right, so there are our notes. Just pause the video and have a read through your notes. Right, so now we're going to have a look at the structure strip here. So for today, I'd like to focus on these 3 parts. So the first couple of lines of your introduction, what society was like and what Mayan cities were like as well. So I'm just going to focus on these 2 here, that first introduction, because once you started, it's fine. And then what their society was like. So I've already written mine. So first off, I've got my subheading, who were the Mayans and what were they like? That's definitely a good thing to start writing, to have before you start your writing. And then this is my introduction here. So Mayans lived in a very sophisticated and advanced society for their time. They had advanced ways of farming, of living, and even of building. So what I've kind of done there, that is just that short introduction about Mayan society. And it's very much, they are facts, aren't they? But they're not very specific facts. They're very general facts. So I'm saying the Mayans were advanced. And then I'm giving a little introduction about what I'm going to talk about in this chapter. So advanced ways of farming, of living, and even of building. In fact, in there, I probably... No, I don't think I have, actually. Never mind, ignore that. And then I go on to say this. Mayan society had a class structure and was split into 2 main sections, the elite and ordinary people. So here I've mentioned class systems. This is where it does get a little bit complicated because there's not... Excuse me. Just get the green one there. So these are just ideas down the side here. So I'm going to explain what their society was like, but I'm not putting it as a subheading. I'm just writing it as like a separate paragraph. So I've mentioned the class structure and the two different classes. So now I need to explain what elite and ordinary people do. So in my next paragraph, what I've done is I've explained the elite were the ruling class who had all of the wealth and power. These included members of the royal family, priests, scribes, and then I've put in brackets there, giving them extra information, people trained in Mayan writing, and generals of the army. Okay, so here, this is that green bit where I'm talking, excuse my horrendous highlighting, it's very difficult with a touchpad mouse. So I've introduced the class system, and now in this bullet point, I'm just going to do the whole bullet point, I'm not going to do the whole thing, I'm explaining what the elite were. Now, underneath, you can see I've done my second bullet point here, so it's definitely a good way to get in a colon and a bullet point list. So, the ordinary people were the majority of the population of a city-state who would do jobs like labouring, farming, hunting and building. So here you can see I've gone into a little bit of detail about what the ordinary people do. I haven't mentioned, that's just that bit at the end there. Oh, I should have probably used a different colour there, Mr. Kerman. Let's use light blue. So at the end there where I've said what jobs they would do, I've got there, and it's the same. Well, it's not quite the same for the first one. No, is it? So let's change that first one, yeah. And you can see in that last one I haven't added that, but I'll come back to that on a different day. So I've got my examples there of what each one did, and then at the bottom I've just given a bit more of an explanation. So I put, unsurprisingly, the elite ruled over ordinary people. So you can see there, that's where I've mentioned what my elite do. Ruled over the ordinary people, with ordinary people expected to give some of their crops and livestock to the elite classes. Ordinary people were also expected to fight during wars with other city-states, and they had to help build all public buildings. When you go back and have a look at what my what notes that I took, I haven't exactly copied these in the sentence order like they are. I've thought about everything and I've thought, right, I'm going to write this in a way that mixes all of those facts together. And that's the quite difficult thing about writing non-chronological reports. One thing that, and obviously you're at home and you haven't got me there, so it's very difficult for you to get into this way of thinking. What you want to avoid is just writing your notes out again as a non-chronological report, otherwise it won't look as good. Okay, so have a go at writing just these two parts today. Don't worry about writing the whole section. And if you like, you can always email me your work, send a picture and email it to the Year 6 account so I can have a look at it and give you some advice. Good luck, Year 6, and I'll see you tomorrow.